You wouldn't think much of it at first. Just another gym in Miami. Heavy metal clanking, mirrors fogged with sweat, and muscle-bound regulars lifting like their lives depended on it. Sun Gym was the kind of place that felt intense, but harmless. Until it wasn't. What no one realized was that behind those flexed biceps and protein shakes, a group of men, bodybuilders obsessed with wealth, image, and dominance, were planning something horrifying. Something that would leave 2 people brutally murdered and another fighting to survive a nightmare few could ever imagine. These weren't just meatheads trying to get rich quick. They were predators. And their prey was anyone with enough money to catch their eye. This is the true story behind the Sun Gym Gang, a story of greed, delusion, and human darkness so outrageous it inspired a Hollywood film. But what the movie didn't show is how truly deranged it all was. It started with a man named Daniel Lugo. Lugo was charming. Too charming. He could sell you a dream and make you think it was your idea. In 1993, he was managing Sun Gym in North Miami, surrounded by guys chasing the perfect physique. But Lugo wasn't just sculpting his body. He was shaping a plan. One that would bring him power, wealth, and eventually, a body count. By this time, Lugo had already done prison time for fraud, pretending to be a financial big shot from a fake Hong Kong bank, scamming small businesses out of thousands. He served 15 months, got probation, and came out hungry. Not for redemption, but for more. At the gym, he surrounded himself with men who admired him. One of them was Noel Adrian Doorbal, Lugo's right hand. Doorbal was younger, ripped, and eager to follow. Then there was Jorge Delgado, a trainer at Sun Gym with a crucial connection. He knew their first target personally. Marc Schiller. Schiller was a businessman, successful, confident, and, most importantly, trusting. Too trusting. He and Delgado had been close. Partners, even. So close that Delgado knew the layout of his house. The alarm codes. His routines. Everything they needed. That's when the fantasy turned real. Lugo told his crew that Schiller had stolen money, hundreds of thousands, from him and Delgado. Whether it was true didn't matter. What mattered was what came next. They weren't just going to scare him. They were going to take everything he had. Kidnap him. Force him to sign over his assets. Then, if things went smoothly, kill him. It sounds like a movie, right? But this was real. And far more brutal than anyone could have imagined. They tried to abduct Schiller 7 times. 7. Each time, they wore masks, camouflage, or staged fake scenarios. They even considered dressing as ninjas on Halloween. And every time, something went wrong. A passing car. A mistimed move. Schiller never saw them coming, but he always slipped away, unknowingly evading death. Then came November 14, 1994. Schiller was at his deli, waiting for a potential buyer who never showed. As he walked to his car, 3 men ambushed him in broad daylight. Tasers. Punches. A van waiting nearby. Within seconds, he vanished. For weeks, they held Schiller captive in a dingy warehouse. Tied to a chair. Blinded by a mask. Beaten. Tortured. Deprived of food. He was forced to call his wife, telling her to take their kids and flee to Colombia, just to cover so the gang could invade his home without interference. They made him sign over everything, bank accounts, properties, businesses. Even his life insurance. Over and over, they brought him papers to sign, while he sat bruised, dehydrated, and broken. What was supposed to take 2 days stretched into nearly a month. And when they finally had what they wanted, the Sun Gym Gang decided it was time to finish the job. Their plan? Stage a drunk driving accident. Make it look like he'd lost control. A tragic end. No questions asked. They filled him with alcohol for days, barely keeping him conscious. Then, in the dead of night, they strapped him into his car and slammed it into a pole. But Schiller didn't die. So they lit him on fire. And still, he didn't die. He stumbled out of the burning wreckage like something out of a nightmare. Flames licking his back. Smoke in his lungs. He was alive, and they were panicking. They hit him with their car. Not once, but twice. And when another vehicle approached, they fled, assuming he'd finally be dead. But he wasn't. Marc Schiller survived. Barely. And when he woke up in a hospital, he said nothing. Didn't give his name. Didn't ask for police. He knew they would come for him if they knew he was alive. So he vanished, quietly leaving Miami and flying to New York to regroup, recover, and plot his revenge. But the Sun Gym gang? They were just getting started. With Schiller gone, they moved into his house, claiming to be government agents, telling neighbors he'd been deported. They drove his cars. Spent his money. Lived in his home like kings. And no one questioned a thing. Until they found a new target. His name was Frank Griga. A millionaire. A flashy one. Known for driving a bright yellow Lamborghini and running a phone sex empire. Lugo wanted that money. And Griga had no idea who he was dealing with. What happened next would be even more twisted than what they did to Schiller. Because this time, there were two victims. And this time, the gang wouldn't leave anyone alive. Frank Griga liked fast cars, fast money, and even faster deals. He was the kind of man who didn't just chase the American dream, he sprinted after it, and caught it. His business? Adult phone services. And in the 90s, that meant serious cash. His Miami mansion was gaudy, his lifestyle loud, and to someone like Daniel Lugo, he might as well have been a walking ATM. Lugo saw Griga as the next jackpot. Only this time, they weren't going to make the same mistakes. They planned it out. This one had to be smooth, sharp, professional. No weeks of torture. No missed chances. In and out. Take the money, clean, simple, done. But nothing about the Sun Gym gang ever stayed simple. It was May of 1995. Lugo set the trap by using a woman named Sabina Petrescu, an exotic dancer from Hungary he'd been dating. He told her he was a CIA operative. Not a joke. He actually convinced her of that. Sabina believed she was helping with a top-secret government mission. That's how deep Lugo's lies ran. She was sent in to charm Griga. And it worked. Griga agreed to a dinner meeting. He even brought his girlfriend, Krisztina Furton, a beautiful former model who trusted him completely. The four of them met with Lugo and Doorbal under the pretense of a business opportunity, a chance to invest in a new phone line empire. Easy pitch. Big returns. It sounded just legit enough to bite. The meeting ended without drama. So they scheduled another one. May 25th. That was the night it all went wrong. Griga and Furton arrived at Doorbal's apartment. It was supposed to be a quick discussion. But almost immediately, the tone shifted. Griga started asking questions. Real questions. He wasn't the kind of man to hand over money without vetting the deal. That made Lugo nervous. And it made Doorbal dangerous. No one knows exactly what triggered it, but at some point, Doorbal snapped. There was a struggle. A loud one. Griga was hit. Hard. Strangled. Left convulsing on the floor, blood pooling from his nose. He didn't survive. Furton screamed. Tried to run. Doorbal grabbed her, injected her with a horse tranquilizer. It didn't knock her out. So he gave her more. And more. Until her heart stopped. 2 people. Dead. And the gang? They had no money. No contracts. Nothing. Just 2 bodies, and a mess to clean up. They tried to play it cool. Wrap the bodies in towels. Stuff them into furniture boxes. Use weights and buckets and bleach. But nothing about this was clean. They drove around with corpses in the back of a U-Haul, sweating in the Florida heat, paranoid and sloppy. Eventually, they cut the bodies into pieces. Heads. Torsos. limbs. Dumped them in barrels, abandoned them in random spots, praying the animals or elements would do the rest. But the arrogance didn't stop. They went back to Griga's house. Tried to withdraw money using Furton's IDs. Called banks, tried to transfer funds, posing as family. They even tried to sell off his Lamborghini. And that's when the cracks started to show. The police weren't interested in missing persons at first. Griga had money, he traveled, maybe it was just a lover's spat. But then something strange happened. Sabina, the dancer, started talking. Not all at once, but enough to raise red flags. She told police about a mission, about Lugo being CIA, about an apartment, and bodies. Detectives were stunned. But once they started pulling on the threads, everything unraveled. Surveillance footage. Rental trucks. Paper trails. And then, Marc Schiller. Alive. Waiting. Ready to tell his story. The police flew to New York. Interviewed Schiller. And everything clicked. The warehouse. The beatings. The signatures. The car crash. The fire. It was all real. And now, it was time to bring the gang down. In June 1995, the arrests began. Lugo. Doorbal. Delgado. Even Sabina, though she was ultimately deemed an unknowing accomplice. What investigators found was beyond disturbing. Weapons. Fake IDs. Stolen assets. Handwritten notes outlining torture plans. A fridge containing bleach-soaked towels. And in a lake, what remained of Frank Griga and Krisztina Furton. The media went wild. The case had everything: muscle-bound killers, millionaire victims, exotic dancers, lies so big they felt scripted. Except they weren't. It was all horrifyingly true. And the trials? They were just as unbelievable. Lugo and Doorbal were the stars of the courtroom, defiant, smug, treating the murders like business deals gone sideways. Lugo claimed innocence. Doorbal blamed Lugo. And the jury didn't buy any of it. In 1998, both men were sentenced to death. Delgado cooperated with prosecutors. He got 15 years. Others connected to the gang got varying sentences, some for fraud, some for aiding and abetting. But the true cost? That's harder to measure. Marc Schiller lived. But he lost everything: his money, his business, even the trust of people who once believed in him. He spent years trying to rebuild. The trauma never left. As for the bodies in the lake, they were buried. Quietly. Without fanfare. The victims? They became footnotes in a case remembered more for its absurdity than its sorrow. Even Hollywood couldn't resist. In 2013, Pain and Gain hit theaters. Directed by Michael Bay. Starring Mark Wahlberg and Dwayne Johnson. It played like a dark comedy. But for the real victims, there was nothing funny about it. Because behind every absurd twist was a real person who never made it out alive. The Sun Gym gang believed they were too smart, too strong, too slick to ever get caught. But in the end, they weren't criminal masterminds, they were just bodybuilders with a taste for fast money and no understanding of consequences. They didn't kill for revenge. They didn't kill out of desperation. They killed for greed. For vanity. For the illusion of power. And what's maybe even darker, they truly believed they could get away with it. Daniel Lugo walked into that courtroom like a man auditioning for a role. Calm. Poised. Like he still thought he had control of the story. But the jury didn't see a mastermind. They saw a manipulator. A liar. A killer. Adrian Doorbal, he barely spoke. His silence screamed guilt. He was the muscle, but also the madness. The one who pulled the trigger, or tightened the rope, or injected the poison. He showed no remorse. Their death sentences were a formality. Florida's death row became their new gym. No protein shakes. No women. No Lamborghinis. Just time. Endless time. Waiting to die. Jorge Delgado tried to play both sides. He flipped early. Told his version. Got his deal. But the blood didn't wash off. He might be out of prison now, walking free. But he'll never escape what he helped build. As for Sabina Petrescu, she was used. Lied to. Manipulated. But she wasn't innocent either. She helped lure the victims. Maybe she didn't know what would happen next, but she helped open the door. And once that door opened, it couldn't be closed. The real tragedy? It's not in the headlines. It's in the small, quiet moments that followed. Marc Schiller, he didn't just lose millions. He lost trust. Friends. His sense of safety. He became a ghost of himself, spending years trying to convince people he wasn't crazy, that his story wasn't fiction. It wasn't until the gang got caught that anyone fully believed him. Frank Griga and Krisztina Furton, they weren't even supposed to be part of this. They walked into a meeting. They never walked out. Their lives were erased because someone saw them as numbers on a spreadsheet. They were loved. They mattered. But they were treated like disposable assets. And in the years that followed, their names were barely mentioned. Overshadowed by Lugo's fake CIA stories and Dorbel's dead-eyed stare. Hollywood came knocking. Gave the case a twist of humor. Made the killers into caricatures. And while the movie Pain and Gain entertained millions, it also reopened wounds for the families who never really got closure. Because this wasn't a joke. This was real. People died. People were tortured. Lives were destroyed. All because a few men wanted the dream life, without working for it. That's the thing about monsters. They don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes, they flex in the mirror. Sometimes, they smile at the gym. Sometimes, they convince you they're just living the American dream. But the dream, for some, becomes a nightmare for everyone else. And when it ends, all that's left are the bodies, the lies, and the quiet echo of what could have been. Thanks for watching True Crimes Now. If this story stunned you as much as it stunned investigators, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the next case we cover might just be the one that keeps you up tonight.